honeymoon. Just love serving the Lord and getting out and meeting people. 17 years ago, if you would have told me I'd been doing this, I'd told you you're crazy, because we would argue. We had a dairy farm, and we would argue who was going to go to town to get supplies or whatever. We loved being on the farm, homebodies, and didn't like going out, and so to see what we're doing now is pretty remarkable, and it just goes to show that it's of the Lord. But what I'd like to do now is actually take and show you a few pictures of, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Anyway, we're missionary builders, and what we do is, why you folks support us is that when we go to a church to build, we do not charge any labor cost. And so we're able to build a project, build a church for these churches, build a building for approximately half the price that it would normally cost them. And in our main emphasis is mission churches. If we can help a mission church get into their own building for the first time, it just grows that work so much more when they're able to get into their own building. And unfortunately, we always don't have a mission church ready every year, or when we finished our last project. And so that makes it possible for going out and helping churches of like faith to be able to, and Baptist in name and doctrine and all of that, to be able to help them with their building needs. And so it's just a privilege for us to be able to do that. Something we've recently came across about 3 projects ago is in Columbus, Wisconsin. And the head of their building committee had done some research, and he had come across a foundation. It's the John C. Lasko Foundation. And for those, I'm sure most of you probably don't know him, but John Lasko was a tool and die. In fact, he was the largest independently owned tool and die maker in the United States. And he was based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he loved the Lord, he loved missions, and just had never married, so didn't have any family, and but just wanted to serve the Lord in however he could. And so when he had sold the company, and I'm sure it was a phenomenal amount, but he established, when he had died, in his will, he had set up the John Lasko Foundation. And what this is he will help any church that is building a sanctuary. And it'll be like, for instance, if it was for you folks, from that back wall right there, his foundation would pay for everything from site work to finish work, from that wall forward, back to this way, and to help establish these churches and get them growing and in their new buildings. And so, for instance, our first project, that church received $140,000. Then our second project, which was out in Pueblo, West Colorado. And in fact, that's where this picture was taken, is one of the few snowstorms we had. We took this on a Sunday morning on the way to church and had this picture taken. But they received, I think it was around $70,000. But this last project that we did down in Cantonment, Florida, which we'll be showing you most of the pictures this morning, they received $375,000. Over $250,000 that they received through this grant. And because of that, and because of the money that they had already saved up, they are in their building totally debt-free. And so it's just been a huge blessing for them, and just a neat blessing for a lot of churches. I know the first year that we were affiliated with the foundation, they said that they gave over $5 million away that year. The board only meets once a year, and that's when they determine who is going to get it. But it's just a neat thing to see how a man of God, a man who loved God and who God had blessed immensely with money that, I know all of us can't fathom the kind of money that we're talking about that's there. But just neat to see how he had a love for God's people and a love for God's work. And so it's really been a neat thing for us to be able to be a part of and to help these churches and direct them into being able to get this funding. Because right now we have several churches that are ready to build. They've got their property. We've been working on the prints and everything. But the biggest hurdle, the thing that's stopping them right now, is their finances. They just don't have the money. And in fact, we were supposed to be in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. And our pre-construction coordinator went there and started getting all the bids put together and everything. And it came in at $300,000 over budget. And so needless to say, we weren't able to go there. They had applied for the Lasco Foundation, and for some reason, they got turned down. It's the first church that we've worked with that it actually got turned down. And so we went in and started shaving wherever we could shave, and we made the building just a little bit smaller, and it wasn't no big, extravagant, fancy building at all. And they desperately need a building. They have 80 members that are meeting in the basement of a house, and they're just packed to the walls, and they drastically need a building. And shaved it down, and it's still, the second time we went in to do the pre-construction and getting the bids, it's still $150,000 over budget. And so they're just praying now this winter they're going to reapply for the Lasco grant. They're able to reapply for it. And so just pray with us that they would be able to, it's a Faith Baptist Church of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and just pray that the funding would come in. And the biggest problem, actually, is not the building or the people, it's the county government. They are dictating so much stuff to this building that it's ridiculous. Just things, they wanted a 10-12 pitch roof, a really steep roof, so it would look like a church. On the back side of the building that's against the woods, where it's just a blank wall, because there's where the bathroom facilities and stuff are, where you don't want windows there. They want you to put a fake window, make it look like you've got windows there, because they want windows on all four sides of the building. It's just ridiculous stuff like that. And then even the site work, this is a Christian company, a Christian that loves the Lord and is trying to do the best he can for them. But just the site work is $170,000. So it's a lot of major hurdles that they need to get over there. And so just pray for Faith Baptist Church and that the Lord would just make it possible. We're just, all we can really say is we got to trust the Lord for His timing in it. We don't want to run ahead of the Lord, and so we just trusting Him for His timing in going to there. And so we're just praying for them folks. And so we just learned this week. We knew it was kind of the possibilities, but there's right now it's at about a 95% chance. That we are actually going to be going to West Virginia, the northeast corner of West Virginia. Fort Ashby is the name of the town, and we're going to build a new auditorium for them. Excuse me, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we've got some pictures we want to show you with that. So with that, we'll go ahead and show you, like I said, this last project was in Cantonment, Florida. We built a 6,500 square foot auditorium for them. And the builders spent a year down there and got that done. And then with the Oconomowoc postponement, we were able to go back down and help them do some remodeling in their old building. And so we're going to show you some of that now. When we got there, Gulf Coast Baptist Church was meeting in this building. They owned it. It would comfortably sit 80. And they were running usually well over 100 people every Sunday. And so needless to say, we were packed in there like sardines. A lot of times they would actually dismiss the junior church before church even started, just to make room in the auditorium for the people that were waiting to get in. When we got to Cantonment, we actually, they had sent the prints and the plans and permits all into the county, and they ended up sitting on them for about 2 months. We got there in August, and it wasn't actually till October that we started building. And so in the meantime, the Lord made it possible for us to be able to help out some of the folks in the church. One part of it, we were actually, and I think we needed to have our heads examined because it was in August, and it was 100 degrees, and we were cutting firewood. Go figure. But anyway, but then it also, the Lord made it possible for us, for this gentleman here, his name is Harold Hunt. Yeah, right, Harold, yeah. And he had a really bad lung disease. And, I mean, if he took 5 steps, he was out of breath. And he had this chair, but he couldn't use it because there's like 4 steps to get up into his house, no matter which door you went in. And so we were able to go as builders, and we built this ramp for him. And he was so excited to be able to use his chair and get out and be able to be more mobile. And then this was in August, and then the Lord called Jesse home in February of the next year. So Harold is no longer struggling to breathe. He's with our Lord and Savior. So then when we started on our site work, finally got all our permits ready and everything, and to look at the site, it would really blow your mind. It looked fairly flat, but actually there was a 54-inch difference from one corner of the building going kitty corner across it to the next side. And so you can see here where all these 2x4s that are going across here, that's just steps up that we had to do in order to get our footers put in. And so it made for a lot of work. We actually did hire a cement contractor to come in and help us with this, because they say, to do cement work in Florida, you really got to know what you're doing, because it's hard enough most places, but then when you have that heat and humidity that you got to work with, to be able to stay ahead of it. And so this is one of the contractors there. It actually was 4 brothers that were adopted out of a foreign country. I can't think of it right now, but anyway, that a family had adopted, and they're all cement contractors, but got to work with them. So then we hired a block layer also to do the stem walls. Most of the time we pour that out of cement, but for some reason they used block on this project. So then here we're actually getting ready. We're grading off the slab and getting ready to pour the building there. And something that was really interesting, you can see this gentleman over here with the garden hose. Well, he's not spraying water. A huge thing they do down there is pest control. And so, for instance, like on the blocks around the outside, we core filled all of them blocks. We filled them with cement. But before we did that guy came and he sprayed this bug juice all the way around. Every block got a bunch of that spray down in there for killing the bugs. And then before we poured our cement slab, he came and the whole building, he just hosed it down, just soaked it down with this termite and whatnot. You would think that with the cement that they wouldn't bother that, but they can raise havoc with that also. Then another thing that we did that we've never done before is we actually poured solid cement walls. We've always done stick construction, but when we built the church here, they wanted it built to hurricane-proof specs. Of course, living down, Cantonment is out on the Panhandle, just a suburb of Pensacola, so it's right out on the Panhandle of Florida. But they wanted us to build it to hurricane-proof specs. We built it to specs. We did not get it certified. You can have a certified hurricane-proof shelter, but the problem with that is if you did that, then the government, if there was a hurricane, they could actually come in and take control of your building, and they can do whatever they want with it. And so they did not want to have to deal with that. But we did build it to hurricane-proof specs. And so we actually, like I said, poured solid cement walls, and you can see all this styrofoam piled up here. And it was kind of fun. It was almost like doing man-sized Lego blocks. It was a lot of fun putting that together and interesting. We had 2 gentlemen. This is one of them right here, but 2 guys that came from the company that helped instruct us and worked with us and showed us what to do. And you can see here where I'm not sure if that's the full 10 feet. No, there's actually another row going up back in the corner there. But we built them 10 foot tall. And this is where this is not, I think how they say, don't do this at home. This is not quite OSHA approved scaffolding, but this is Mike Carr, one of our builders, and where we put joints at on the corners, and then we just screw a piece of plywood on there. It's phenomenal how that'll hold that cement. It's unbelievable how that works. But the Lord has blessed us. That's actually our skid steer that we've been able to, when we used to farm, we brought it with us, and we were able to save the church an awesome amount of money. It's probably about $1,500 a month on average if you were going to rent a skid steer to use on a site. And we're able to bring it with us, and so we save the church a lot of money, and it makes a lot of our jobs a whole lot easier also. This is actually the day that we poured the walls. We've just going around and finished reinforcing some of the openings. This is one of the doorways that are going into the church. It's actually, technically, I think it's one of the emergency exits. And the guy with the hard hat there, he's actually he's one of the luckiest men in the world, because he gets to run that cement pump truck, and it's one of the biggest remote control toys there are. Because he can walk around with us wherever you want to lay that cement down at. But just a neat invention, and you can see here where he's unfolding that pump truck and getting ready to start pumping. From that one spot where he's parked at, he was able to reach all the way around that building. And we actually made 3 trips around, poured in 3 lifts going around the building so that we wouldn't blow out any of the forms. And you can see where we actually had a catwalk all the way around that we walked on. And then all the up and down posts are actually, there's a turnbuckle on. You can see all these braces. They all had turnbuckles. And so once we got the wall completely poured, then we put a dry line up, and we can go along and we can and if the wall got moved a little bit or something, you just go down and turn the turnbuckle, and we had them walls perfectly straight. And it was really neat how that turned out. Just give you kind of what it looked like. It's not a real good picture, but we had rebar, several layers of rebar in there, and then this black plastic. It's actually a high density plastic, and when they go to a show with that, they'll put a screw in one, and they'll have a pair of pliers there, and said if you can pull that screw out of this plastic, then they have a $50 bill laying there. We'll give you $50, and nobody's ever been able to do it. And so we screw our sheetrock to it, and fasten everything right to that plastic there. And so this is where we are actually pouring. The guy with the hard hat, he's running the machine, and then we had a couple of guys. Jeremy Smith, he's the one actually running the tube on that one. They would switch off because it was fairly hard to kind of work that back and forth and whatnot. And then, so once we got that all poured, we started building our walls, and it was quite interesting because really we didn't hardly build very many walls at all. Because of the cement work. But we did put, this particular picture, we're putting a wall up between the nursery and the toddler room. We did have we had the sanctuary, the foyer, and then we did a nursery, toddler room, and then the bathrooms. So didn't have a lot of interior work that we had to do. That's getting it set in place. Then this is probably one of my most favorite times, is when we're setting rafters, because to me it kind of gives you a look of what the building is going to be like. And so this is, we were able to set all the rafters in one day, and actually the Lord watched after us. This is, here again, where this is like it's the third rafter we put up, and that's me there in the scissor lift working out in the center there. I would unhook the straps and stuff. But it was actually, I think, 2 or 3 rafters later, the guy was swinging the rafter in, and we don't know what happened, but all of a sudden that rafter just buckled and came down and fell into a bunch of different pieces. And fortunately, and here again, I think it was the Lord prompting us, but everybody had a hard hat on. Normally we don't wear hard hats there. I know we should, but we don't. But everybody had a hard hat on, and nobody got hit anyway, but we were just thankful that God had his protective hand on us. Another rafter coming in. And then this is where we're just about getting done. It's pretty much had the sanctuary done there. And then Peggy was there helping, and she had her hard hat on too. So enjoy it when Peggy's able to come out and work with me. And then we started putting the roofing on, and here again, it was a special tin roof that is hurricane proof. And you can't really tell by looking at it, but you can see all these guys going up and down the line there. Approximately every 8 inches, we put a screw in that. They had a slot for wherever there was a slot, you put a screw in it. And so that's what gives it its durability. It locks into the previous sheet, and then we screw it down. Here again, something that we had never worked with. But this young man here is Cody, and just remember Cody, we're going to bring him up again later on. So then the outside of the building, they wanted brick, and so we were able to contract that out. Most of the time we've used a couple of different products for brick. There's a Nova brick, which is an interlocking stackable brick, and then I think it's Alliance brick. It looks, Nova brick, you hold it in your hand, it don't look nothing like a brick. But the other brick we've used, you hold it in your hand, it looks like a brick, but it's got a keyway in it, and you stack it, and it's a mortarless brick. But they wanted regular brick, and so we subbed that out, and so we had these builders, or these bricklayers that came and were able to do that for us. So it just kind of gives you a look of the two contrasting colors that they put up there. This is the back of the building. You actually have some of the air handling systems and the exhaust for the bathrooms, and so it just turned out to be a real pretty building. And then this is the front, the cross. I don't think this is the first time we put a cross like this up, a fiberglass cross. They had a steeple on their old building, but I think they had gotten hit either 3 or 4 times by lightning, and just was not. It's kind of mind-boggling how much lightning happens down there, because they actually have a system in their weather system where they can count how many lightning strikes there are. I mean, it gets to be thousands in one storm, thousands of lightning strikes. And so it's kind of different experiencing that down there. So we took the steeple down, but we did put this cross up, and it's lit behind it, so it really, at night, it really is a sharp, appealing look to the church. And I don't know what happened, but somehow I lost a bunch of pictures. And so we went from putting rafters up and doing the outside to doing finish work. So I apologize for that. But we did all the duct work in there, the builders. In fact, Mike and I were the ones that pretty much did all of the duct work, so we're crawling around up there in the rafters. And then we had here again, we were able to find a Christian HVAC man. And so he installed all the units themselves, and they go in the catwalk up above the restrooms. But so anyway, so this is the sanctuary that we did. I've never done so many can lights in my life. I think we had 80 can lights in the sanctuary, but they're all LED. Everything there is LED and very energy efficient. And just, the folks, they didn't want it extravagant, but yet they want a nice, just like you folks, a nice, appealing building that honors the Lord. And so here we're working on some of the trim work and getting it finished up. And then this is where we actually had the carpet laid. And here again, the Lord just blessed them immensely, because they had a gentleman in their church that laid carpeting or did flooring. And so he brought one of his guys on a Saturday. He brought one of his men who, Dante is this young man's name. And pray for Dante. I need to see if I can get a picture of him. Martin, the businessman, he has tried witnessing to Dante over and over and over again. And Dante doesn't want anything to do with the Lord. But we were able to work alongside them. But we actually, all the carpet we laid, it's, I don't know how new of a product it is, but they're 2-foot square carpet tiles. And then they have a special glue you put down. So like say, 5 years from now, if there was something that went wrong with a section of the tile, or carpet, if something got spilt on it or whatever, you can actually go in and peel that piece of carpet up and lay a new one down in the same place, and that glue will hold it. And so it's really a neat product that we use. But we did the whole church in one day with all the people we had helping us. We were able to get the whole thing done in one day, so that was a lot of fun. So then on our first Sunday, we had our first Sunday in the building, and the dedication Sunday, and our last Sunday for the builders, because the next week after that, we all started heading to what we thought was going to be our next project and family conference. But it was just a blessed time. It is one of my favorite times, and it never failed. I don't say anything, but it seemed like just about every first Sunday or dedication Sunday, we sing, "To God be the glory," because really God gets all the glory for what's been done. It's humbling. I don't really like it, but a lot of times, they like to sometimes put the emphasis, or and I realize they appreciate what we've done, but that's not why we're there. We're not there to get the glory or anything like that, or the accolades, but it's just we're there serving the Lord. And actually, the building is just a side effect of what we're actually doing that we'll share here in a minute. But so anyway, we had 230 people. Just about every chair was filled in the building that morning, and it was just a really special time of fellowship with the folks. This is kind of a group picture that we did. I didn't have a wide-angle lens, so I had to kind of take 2 shots to get everybody in it. But and this is Pastor Dennis and his wife Lisa Daniels, the senior pastor there, and they also have a youth pastor. And you don't know what to look at him, but he's an ex-Army drill sergeant. And once in a while, he would revert to his old ways and try to kind of become a drill sergeant again and whatnot. He said he wanted to take all the builders and have a, not really a gym class, but a athletic class to get us all in shape. And needless to say, that did not fly. So it's kind of comical. When he goes out walking, when they go out walking, he walks and she walks. She has to run part of the time to keep up, and then she can walk. Then she's got to run and walk. And so it's kind of, he's a fast walker, but he loves the Lord. They both do. But just to hear him preach the gospel, and he's very educated. He's one of them that have all the alphabet behind your name, the PhD and all of that, doctorate and all of that. Of course, I like telling everybody, I've got a PhD too, and mine didn't cost as much as theirs, because I got mine at Farm and Fleet, because it's a post hole digger. But that's as close to a PhD that I'll ever get. But anyway, just love to hear this man preach. Just a neat man of God. And interesting part, too, is he's a speed reader. I'd never really known a speed reader, I don't think. But just to hear him explain how, he'll read 6 books a week on average. And, he said, he takes a book, he'll read the first line this way, the second line he reads backwards, and the next line he reads forward and back and forth across the book. And it was too much for me to understand. But continue to pray for the Daniels as they lead the church there. They had several outreach weekends and just different times when they're trying to reach out to the community and reach the lost. And I don't know if you can tell, but that is me sitting on that dunk tank. This particular, it was like a carnival that they had, and so different families would sponsor different things that they would do. And so the builders sponsored this dunk tank. We actually had some money left over from a project that we had done. Here, I was talking about when we cut the trees down and stuff, and the lady insisted on paying us for it. Well, we didn't want the money, but she insisted, and so we took it. And so part of that money we used to actually rent the dunk tank. And so that was a huge hit, of course, with the builders in it, but then we were finally able to get Pastor in it. Then everybody wanted to duck Pastor, but it's just a neat way to reach out. Another outreach that they had was they actually had a Jeep show. And I never imagined that there'd be that much for Jeeping done down in Florida, but it's a huge draw to people. And so we used this as an outreach for a men's night when they had their outreach weekend. And we actually had Bill Jenkin, who's the president of our mission. He came down and spoke for the whole weekend. And the awesome thing was that we had 5 men made a decision for the Lord that night. And so it was really a special time. But a member of the church, he's a contractor that we worked with a lot there in the church. He owns both of these Jeeps. He's a huge Jeep fanatic. And I did learn something this last winter when we were down there, what Jeep stands for. Does anybody know what Jeep stands for? The acrostic or whatever you call it. Anybody have a guess? Just empty every pocket. Now, it's an expensive hobby. Very expensive hobby. Then somebody had brought in an old Willis Jeep that hasn't been restored yet, but it's in really good shape, so they had that there for the show. This is Marv and Donna. That day that we had our first meeting, our first service in the new church, they came forward at the end, and they actually joined the church there. And they live right kitty corner from the building. And Peggy had got to know Donna really well. Donna's a seamstress, and Peggy loves to sew, and so they really hit it off and spent a lot of time together. And then she had said, Marv was a woodworker, but he had built this shop, but had never really been able to work in it because he had gotten sick and really struggled to get around. Couldn't hardly get out of the house. And so never really got to use it. But they said if you ever need need anything in the wood shop, just help yourself. You can, come build over here or whatever you need. Well, in the meantime, the church had asked us if we would build some toy boxes and some furniture for the nursery. And so we were able to go over there, and it was just a huge blessing to be able to go over there and work. And this is actually the starting of a music shelf that we made. We actually ended up with 50 cubby holes for the sheet music for the choir, and then actually had some shelving underneath it for other storage. And so this was where we got to work in the shop, and it was so much fun. It was really, we enjoyed working over there. And another picture of the shop there. Excuse me. And like I said, when we got done, we had started moving our equipment up to Florida, because like I said, we thought we were going to go to a Convo Walk. Well, then when we went to family conference a year ago, we learned that that's not going to happen. And so then we had some meetings even while we were still there in Ankeny that same week. And the Lord made it possible for us to be able to go out and do some of these odd jobs that a lot of these churches, we can't really send a group of builders there to do, and yet there's nobody in the church that can do it. And so our first project that we did technically was not a CBM project, but we had Billy and Esther O, some really good friends of ours that worked with us over here at Williamsburg when we were building. They were Nehemiah builders with our mission, where they traveled around and volunteered. But they had to go home because of family matters. But a lady in their church, this is her house, and when Billy called us and told us that we need to put a dormer in her bathroom. And I thought, excuse me, I said, well, that can't be too terrible. And so we agreed to come and do it. Well, that dormer in the bathroom was way up here on the 3rd floor, right up in that area. And so, yeah, when we got there and started looking around, I thought, what did we get ourselves into? But excuse me, what? Oh, yeah, my favorite verse in the Bible is, lo, I am with you always. Lo is the key word there. But anyway, Billy, he's had wiring background, and so he was able to completely rewire the bathroom up there. And that wiring was a nightmare. It was terrible. This is actually the floor of the bathroom. We had to put all new stringers across there. And actually I think it was this stringer, the old one. When I laid the new one beside it, the old one had sagged 1.5 inches compared to where it should have been up, even with that new stringer. And so we were able to completely redo the floor for her. And then here's where we are framing that up. We had 4 sections of scaffolding, and so that was not comfortable, but we were able to do that for them. And this is actually the new wall. This house used to be a barn, and you could tell once you got torn into it. Like, for instance, there's an old barn beam right there, and that's where the original ceiling sat, was right down on that. And so we added all of this up here to where, because they actually had almost a 4-foot section in that bathroom that wasn't used. They had actually put a wall out here because they didn't have the head clearance. And so we were able to open up that building and give them 4 feet more and be able to make that bathroom more usable for them. And then from there, we went to Curtisville, Michigan. One of our church planters, Ted and Linda Joels, had just recently gone to this new work here. Actually, it's not a new work because the church has actually been in existence for almost 180 years. But they're way out in, they're in the boondocks. They're nothing. We had to drive 45 miles to get to Walmart and Home Depot to get the supplies we needed and whatnot. And so they're a long ways out there, but yet they have a love for these people there, a desire to see this church grow and to be able to reach people for Christ. And so we were able to go there. But the reason we went there is because the house, the parsonage that they lived in, right here, the basement, you see it's just a block basement. Well, on the inside, it was just a block basement. They're just blocks, and it was extremely, they said, in fact, the previous pastor told them, on average, it would cost $1,000 a month to heat that house in the wintertime because it gets so cold up there. And so what we did is we went in and we waterproofed the inside of the basement, and then we put 3/4-inch pink styrofoam and completely sealed that all up. And then we added, or actually built, a 2x4 wall all the way around the whole outside of the building, and then filled that all with insulation. Plus, we were able to build a office for pastor right here. The only downfall in this whole project was it was only just barely 7-foot ceilings on the outside. And so like where you have this beam, which basically was a tree that they flattened out on top and bottom, but where these beams and stuff where you almost had to duck to go under before we did anything. And so, we weren't able to do anything with the ceiling at all, but we were able to insulate this house and make it a lot more bearable. And talking with the pastor, they said it was just a huge difference. It wasn't terrible to heat, near as bad as they were afraid of. We did use the purple sheetrock, the mold and mildew resistance, and they were almost tempted just to leave it purple like that. They kind of like that, but we ended up, so here's Peggy, she was doing some of the priming in there when we primed it first, then we painted it yellow, and it's not a real good picture, but this is kind of where, this is the finished product, and where we painted it yellow, that's what they wanted. But then from there, we went to Chatsworth, Illinois. Chatsworth is about halfway between Chicago and Champaign, Illinois, and here again is one of our church planters, and I don't know, Ed and Cheryl Bunt, I don't know if you know them. They graduated to work here in Iowa, and so then the Lord moved them over to Chatsworth, Illinois, and they took over a struggling church there. And the roof here, we ended up putting a whole new roof on, and it was really bad. They had nothing for insulation in the roof, and so we needed to do something different there. And so what we did is the Krugers, Brian and Brenda Kruger, they had purchased a time-lapse camera system, and so we mounted that up on the chimney of the parsonage. And so what you're going to see here is actually some pictures taken from that time-lapse. And I wondered, have you guys seen this? Has he been here when this? Okay, so you haven't seen this, good. So anyway, but this is when they first started getting ready to tear the shingles off. And so this is, you can see where the shingles are coming off. I'll go fast through this. We're getting real low on time. And then this is a special plastic that we rolled out next. And then on top of that plastic, we brought, you can see here there's a line right there. What we did is we got a plywood that has 2 inches of high density styrofoam in it. And so we were able to raise the R value, I think it was like 15 or 20 to a 15 or 20 R value that we were able to, and it was better than nothing like they had. So anyway, so then we added that all the way, and like I said, we did it on both sides, but you can see where the sheets are coming into place there. And there we're just got to finish up on the peak there was all that's left. So then we started putting our tar paper down, and it was awesome because we had a lot of guys that showed up when we started shingling. A couple guys from another town that are professional roofers and stuff, and so it really went fast. We had several nail guns going, but you can see here where the shingles are starting to go up. Just to see that come together. Didn't think I had that many pictures of them in there, but it was a huge blessing to the church for us to be able to go there. And that's actually our final picture where all the builders but me, because you know what my verse is, so we won't go there. I actually stood down and pushed the button to take the picture. Peggy and the other builders' wives were able to work at cleaning the windows up. And what you really don't see, she's actually standing up on the hand railing of the handicap ramp. So we tried to keep that part out. Then, like I said, we actually ended up going back this last fall actually, and started remodeling the old part at Gulf Coast Baptist Church. And so what we did is we put a new roof on that. We put the hurricane-proof or hurricane-resistant metal roofing on it. And and it's nice because it matches the other building now. And actually, this was their old baptistry. They were hurting really bad for storage, and so we were able to put a lot of shelving up in some different rooms for them. And then this is their kitchen. I don't know how many women, even in their house, would put up with a 8x16 kitchen. And then you got to figure a countertop on both sides. So really, they only had 4 feet to work in the center of this kitchen. But we were able to go there, and this is part of the remodeling of the kitchen. And the original kitchen actually was from this wall, this point right here, and then they had a countertop to there. So really, you can see the little bit of space they had in the middle there to work. But we were able to go in and make the kitchen 3 times bigger than what it was. And one of the ministries they have there is with the Panera Bread. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but Panera, every night when they close down, they'll donate what the leftovers that's left from that day. And so every Thursday night, a member of the church would go and pick up the leftovers. And so it was almost a race to see who would get in there first on Friday morning to be able to sort through and get all the treats that you wanted. I had my favorite. They have these shortbread cookies that are like 4x4 cookies. Oh, I love them. I miss them. Anyway, so even just for the Panera Bread ministry they have, this big countertop here, they were really excited to be able to have that room to work. And then another thing we did was in the back of the new building, we put up on the back wall, they have this verse, one of their theme verses, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, Mark 16:15. Last time I said 5, so I caught it. And it's all stainless steel cut out, just a really pretty thing that's up on the wall, so Peggy and I worked on that. Then 1 Corinthians 3:5 and 6 says, who then is Paul and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believed, even as the Lord gave to every man. I have planted, Apollos watered, but God giveth the increase. And I put this verse up because really our main job is to, as we go out, is to sow the seed, to share the gospel with the people that we come in contact with. And I just want to share a few people that we had the privilege of sharing this, sowing the seed with and sharing the gospel as we met them. This is Charles. He was the man that did the roofing for us. And the first day he started up on that roof, he fell off the roof. And but the Lord was watching after him because we actually had, and he was mad because we had our insulation trailer sitting there, and so it was in the way to get them first few sheets up. But the good thing was he fell. Instead of falling 12 feet, he only fell 2 feet because he landed on top of that insulation trailer. And so he wasn't so mad about it afterwards. But and then that was on Monday, and then that Saturday, his dad committed suicide. And he never was close with his dad. And but yet he felt obligated, and so he came to the pastor there and asked if they could have a funeral service. And make a long story short, that same weekend that we had the Jeep outreach, that Sunday morning, Charles and Amy, his wife, they both accepted the Lord as their Savior, and then were baptized and had a lot of their family there, and so it was really exciting to see that. But pray for them. It's like they've gotten busy, and the church has not been the priority that it used to be. So really pray for Charles and Amy. But then also pray for, I'll be coming to them. This is Mary and Robert. And Peggy had the privilege not only to sow the seed, but to reap the harvest. Peggy had the privilege of leading Mary to the Lord on a Monday morning or afternoon. She was in the hospital. Mary had lung cancer. And we had never met her because she couldn't come out to the church, but Robert was real faithful in coming to church and asking prayer for her. But then, Peggy led Mary to the Lord on Monday, and then when she got out of the hospital, they actually had called Peggy and said, Mary would like for you to stand up for her because Robert and her are getting married. Here, come to find out, they've been living together for 29 years and had never been married. And Mary did not want to live in sin as a new child of God. She knew it was wrong for them to live together. And Peggy had, at the hospital, had a chance to witness to Robert. And he figured he was saved because God saved him from a horrific accident. But on Friday, when they were going to get married, Pastor met with Robert and was able to lead Robert to the Lord that same week. And so they both knew the Lord as their Savior. And so then they were married that afternoon. And then that Sunday, Robert got baptized, and Mary was able to come out to the church to see Robert be baptized. But then 3 weeks later, the Lord called her home. And, just impressed on me, she was within 3 weeks of, instead of going to heaven, going to hell. And so we need to be faithful in sharing the gospel with those we come in contact with. This is Cody. This is Charles and Amy's son. Pray for Cody. He would come in every day when we, as builders, we'd have our break time and we have our snack, but we'd also have devotions. And he would come in every day and sit with us, but he has not given his life to the Lord. So pray that Cody would see his need of the Savior. And then also Pray for, I have to ask Peggy every time. Tim and Greg. They're the gentlemen that came and helped us when we did you can see the styrofoam back there, when we did the cement walls. They spent a week with us, and here again, they would sit in with us on our break times and hear the gospel, and we gave them a lot of reading and tracts and stuff when they left, and just pray that they would see their need of a Savior as well. As I mentioned, our next project is going to be Berean Independent Baptist Church with Pastor Richard Riley, and sounds like it's a really neat church group that we're going to help. And the reason we're going is not usually what you would think, but earlier this spring, their church was set on fire on purpose. It was a distraught ex-husband. It was a lady and her kids were going to the church, and they loved the Lord and loved serving there. And so the husband, in order trying to get even with the wife, went and burnt the church down. And they caught him right away. He admitted to it. And it was like 4:30 in the morning when the call came in. And they took him to the building. They caught him within 3 hours. They took him over there, and he said, "Yeah, I parked here, and over here's where I started the fire." And so he admitted to it, which was a relief in a way to us, because we had, you'd had that thought in the back of your mind, there's some Looney Tune running around there. Are we going to have to watch when we're building the new building and whatnot? But no, they were able to catch them. And so, like I said, consequently, they lost everything. Pastor lost his complete library. They said it was between $25,000 and $30,000 worth of books there, and he lost all of that. And so they were pretty distraught. But this is actually their fellowship hall. It is a Morton building, like what you folks have, that they use for a fellowship hall. So now they're actually meeting in that. And it's kind of comical because one of the ladies, their first Sunday is when they met after the fire in here, and they were consistently running around the 80 people, and they had actually had a building fund already started to expand, but they had, I think it was like 110 or 120 people that first Sunday, and they'd been consistently staying in that larger number. And so one of the ladies had said to one of the guys there, said, "Well, what other building can we burn down to get new people to come in?" Well, no, you don't want to go that way, but thankfully, they do have this building that they're able to meet in, and this actually, it looks like I went too far. Hang on. There's not too many people there, but this is actually a meeting, a building committee meeting, and then when they were presenting some of the possibilities for the floor plan and whatnot. And so, Lord willing, we're about 95% sure we're going to be going there the first part of October, but. So we'd ask you to pray for us for wisdom, and once again we want to thank you for the part you play in our ministry. Really pray for me, because I got to kind of hit the books. We found out that the Lord does bless or watch after the ignorant sometime, most of the time, all the time. But I found out that technically I'm supposed to have a CDL in order to pull my tool trailer. We do have a somewhat large tool trailer that was given to us, and so with the truck and trailer, we're over 26,000 pounds, and so I'm supposed to have a CDL. So now that's going to be my next major thing I got to do now when we get home. Is I've been doing some studying and reading on it, but I have to take a written test, then I have to do where you do a walk around before you take your driven test. You got to be able to point out everything on the truck and say what it's used for, and then take a driving test, and then get the federal medical card and all of that. So really pray for wisdom for us with that, to be able to get it and not have to worry about if they're going to come run me down or whatever. Because we found out that it's up to a $5,000 fine, and you could be imprisoned if you're caught without it. So I look back and the Lord was watching after me, because I don't think they would take the ignorant, playing ignorant card or whatever. So really pray for us for that area. So we got about a minute or so left. I don't know if anybody has any questions about our ministry, and if I can try to answer something for you. Yes?
I didn't get where you're going in October.
It's Fort Ashby, West Virginia. It's kind of up in the northeast corner. They say it's just beautiful there. So we're excited about being up there and just in a different environment like that. Yes, sir. No, they did not. I thought I had to slide up there. No, we've got a couple pictures of it. It's just you can see there's a bare cement slab, and we're not even going to build on that site because technically their building was in a floodplain, and they have had up to, they said, 6 or 8 inches of water right up on the front door. They have a special something that they can put up there to keep the water out of the building. But so they knew when this happened they did not want to rebuild on that same site. And so we're actually going to connect it. We're going to be up the hill a little bit where we'll be out of that floodplain. But we're going to connect the building, the new sanctuary is going to be connected via a corridor to the Morton building, their fellowship hall. So they'll be all under one roof. And we're going to be building 7,500 square feet. And so altogether they'll have about 10,500 square feet when it's all said and done. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's kind of a strange story in a way. We kind of ruined it for a lot of people that come after us because Peggy and I actually, it was about a year after we started raising our support, we were able to go to Rockford, Illinois and work on our first project. And at that point, we had about 50% of our support. And the beauty of our ministry is that we could work all week on the building and still go out on the weekends and have meetings, going out raising our support. And it worked fairly well, being able to do that. But now the mission has kind of clamped down on that. And I think you have to have 85% of your support before they will actually, and I think they are a little lenient on it, but anyway, approximately 85% of your support before they'll let you go full-time into the field. But it's just been phenomenal to us how God has blessed us. We're still picking up support, and I think I need to actually sit down and first of the year we're supposed to refigure it, but I haven't done that. But I think we're approximately at the 85 to 90% right now. And so we've been blessed, just unbelievably blessed. Even when the economy was bad and, churches were cutting missions and stuff, and we kept gaining. And I think we've had one church that had to drop us and one church that cut our support in half. But other than that, the Lord's been really, really good. You didn't think it'd get any worse, but this last project, Cantonment that we had the pictures of, our last Sunday there this year now, it was hard. I mean, I lost it big time. I just stood up there and bawled like I couldn't hardly talk. In fact, it's kind of comical because, like I said, Pastor being the drill sergeant that he is and tough guy, and he seen me. I was sitting on the center aisle a little ways back, and we were singing that last song before I was going to come up and share a little bit before he preached. And I couldn't even sing. I started losing it even then. And he saw me. Well, the little stinker, he was kind of sitting up there chuckling at me, kind of laughing, because I was losing it before I even got up there. That is probably the biggest mixed emotions we have. We hate to leave a project because we've made so many friends, and yet we're excited to see what God's going to do next, what He's going to allow us to be a part of. And just about every project we've had people say, well, you could stay here. And I said, yeah, we could stay, but we would not be happy because this isn't where God has called us to settle down at. The Lord, as far as I know, we're going to do this till the day we die, and looking forward to it. And like I said, excited and love doing it. I think we're about out of time, but once again, like I said, we just want to thank you for the part you play in our ministry. So thank you very much.